Okay, hi everyone. Nice to see you here, although I was counting that no one will be here after the break, but it's good that you're here. So let's start. My name is Kaja, and my presentation today will be about the psychology of building habits and its use in designing mobile application and other digital products. So a quick intro about me. Currently, I'm a lead UX designer at Info Mobile, which is a software company. We create digital products for international clients like mobile applications, but also website systems and things like IoT, etc. So I'm also a cognitive neuroscience and human-computer interaction graduate. This is why designing and psychology are things that really passionate me, and this is why it's the topic of my today's presentation. So first of all, I would like to start with a question, which is why the products that we design usually fails. So how many of you are designers here? Please raise your hand. Oh wow, not so many, okay. But I hope that all of you know about the good design process, which includes things like discovery phase, design, testing, etc. So what we do know is we know about how to do all that. We know how to discover user needs. We need to how to discover user pain points and how to research their behaviors. We also know how to design great digital products that are usable, that are beautiful, that answers all those needs or pain points. But sometimes that's not enough. So we design this product, we do all of that, we develop this shiny new application or other product, and we are counting on the fact that users will use it regularly. But sometimes that's not what happens. The user will download the application or log to the product and they never come back to it again. They use it once or maybe twice or maybe a few times after that, but then they churn. So what happens in the meantime? Why does it happen? What can we do about it? So the problem with that is that we think that just by doing this perfect design process, just by discovering our target group needs and everything, this will be enough, this will be sufficient. But actually it's not. This is because we forget about the fact that we should not only know about our target users, but we also should know about people, like who we are, how we think, what we do, how we behave. Those are all the things that actually later can result in our product not being used by our users. And we also forget about the fact that using new products, doing new things requires a lot of effort, requires conscious thought to do so. It's not like the user will download the app and then they will fall in love with it and everything will be all right. There's a lot of things going on in the meantime, and this is what I would like to tell you about today. So first, I would like to ask you a question. How much time do you think we spend every day doing things completely automatically, like, you know, on auto mode? So how many of you think it's around 20%? Raise your hands if you think it's 20%. Okay, no one. 40%? Anyone? Okay. 60? Okay, more. 80? Okay, a lot. 100? I hope not. Okay, so the research says that it's roughly 40 to 50% of what we do every day we do completely automatically. But from the cognitive neuroscience perspective, I would argue that it's more around 80%, because even though sometimes we engage our conscious thought into our actions, it usually is our chain of thought happens to the correspondence of our environment. So we see something, we feel something, and then we start to think about it, and then we create a chain of thought. For example, I think about coffee, then it reminds me that I have to go to work, and I start thinking about what I have to do at work today, and it's all those things that happens in our mind, which we feel that it's conscious thought, but actually it's a result of some external cue or trigger in the environment that started all that. So I would argue here that it's much more than just 40–50%. But what we have to understand and remember about is that when we want our users to try something new, to download our product and to use it regularly, we only have like 50% of his time to do that because it's not habit yet. We didn't create this habit yet. So this is what your brain looks like and your conscious thought. Your conscious thought and your conscious self is this person riding on a cat, which is just flowing, and you're in it for a ride. You're just thinking, you're trying to explain what your brain is doing, but actually you don't have much control over what's happening. This is the problem here, that we don't know how much of the things we do are completely automatical and are a result of the environment and how our brain works. But that's also quite good because of the fact that we do all those things automatically, like driving, making coffee, typing on the keyboard, breathing, walking, and all of those things that can be more complex. We can actually put more thought into creative processes. We can actually do more than just focus on living through the day, because if we were to focus on everything that we do in every minute of our life, then we would have no time to actually do something more than that. So this is why it's also good and bad, right? Because we actually have no idea how much time we spend doing things that we don't think about, but also it's better for us because we are more efficient, we are more creative, and we can accomplish more in our lives. So going back to the users, when we want the user to use the product, when we want someone to do some new thing, it can be, for example, a person starting driving lessons. So what this person has to do to actually execute that action, he has to go through the whole funnel of the activities of the stages in the funnel that has to happen in the same time to actually result in the action. So this is the problem. We don't know about it. We don't think about the fact that all those things has to happen for the user to use our app for the first many times. And this is really complicated because the process is really long. So the first thing is the cue. The cue in the process is this trigger in the environment or in user's thought to actually do something. This is what triggers the behavior. This is what starts the funnel. So, for example, if you want to learn Spanish with, for example, Duolingo app, then you need some trigger. For example, it's a reminder in your mind that tomorrow you have a test coming. So then you start thinking, oh, hey, I need to learn Spanish. This is a trigger. Then you have the reaction to it. And the reaction is completely automatical. This is what happens when we react to the prior experiences that we had in the past. So we quickly react to the fact whether we even want to do something about it, whether we like this activity or we had negative or positive past experiences. So this happens in milliseconds. It's not conscious at all. And then comes the phase which is evaluation, which is somehow conscious. This is when we evaluate whether we actually want to work on that trigger and on that reaction, whether the cost of benefit, whether the cost of doing that is lower than the benefit. Because if the cost is higher than the benefit, then we will not perform this action because it will require a lot of effort, which will not give us any reward of doing that. And then we have the ability, which is just whether we are able to even do this action, whether we have resources, whether we have the skills. So if we don't have that, we will not go further, because if I've never even learned Spanish at all, or even if I've never driven a car before, I will not just go out and start driving, right? This is like, I need to have the skills and abilities. And the last thing is timing. So the timing, we have to evaluate, we as people evaluate whether the timing is right for this action. So even though we, for example, we have the cue of learning Spanish, we react to it positively because we, for example, like learning Spanish, and then we evaluate that we want to do it because we have to, because tomorrow is the test, and we have the ability because we've been learning Spanish for 5 months, and then there's the timing. So for example, I'm watching TV. And I'm started to think, like, is it really the time to do it? Maybe I will do it later. Maybe this is, for now, I prefer to watch TV, right? So if I do it, and if I push the action for later, I have to go through the whole funnel again for the action to execute, for me to start learning Spanish. And this is what happens with people when they start some new activity. When they, in your case, when they start using your product, they have to go through this funnel many, many times before it becomes habitual. And with habits, it's much better, because with habits, it's only those two stages at the top, which is a cue and reaction. So when we have a trigger, then it just automatically starts a reaction and we don't even think about it. So for example, when you're making coffee every morning, then you just wake up, you go straight to the coffee machine, you prepare this coffee, and you don't even think about it. For example, you just stand there sipping your coffee, and after that you realize, wow, what has happened? So you don't need all those other things for that. And at every step of the process, there can be many distractions. Everything distracts us in every time. So for example, some of you right now are not listening to me, but sitting on your phones, which is usually what happens at conferences. And this is exactly what will happen with your users. They may have the cue or they may have the positive reaction, but then sometimes they, the dog will come to the room or someone calls them, and then they stop the funnel and they won't do this action. So there's a lot of complex things in our world and our behavior that will even that may influence whether our user will even start the action. And after that, we have to work on the product so he wants to use it regularly. So what is a habit? So we're all on the same page. So a habit is actually a repeated automatic behavior that is triggered by some cue in our environment. And it always happens in a stable environment. So for example, if I do coffee every time in the morning, then this becomes a habit and it's cued by just waking up, right? But if I'm in a completely new situation, then it won't happen, because the habit it's broken by new situations, so the context has to be stable for the habit to happen. And here are some examples of habits. So for example, so as I said, it can be like making coffee every morning. This is like a cyclical habit that happens every time you wake up. So it's triggered by just waking up and nothing else, actually. It can be switching the light on in the dark room. So we don't think about it, but it's also a habit, right? We go to the dark room, and first thing we do, we are looking for a light switch so we can change the situation we're in. So because we did it for so many times in our past, this became completely habitual. And the third thing can be checking your emails every morning after going to work. This can be the first thing that you do when you're at work. So many things can become habitual. Those can be like small actions, or they can be like complex things like driving a car, or almost everything that you do in your life. And if you do it enough times, it will become habitual because of how we strive for efficiency, as our brain wants to become more efficient. So the importance of habits in the business is we need to remember about the fact that just by using habits and building habits in our users, the business can strive because of that. And the first thing is that we don't need to prompt our user to use the product if it has become a part of his natural daily schedule. If he uses it regularly without any conscious thought, then we don't have to advertise the product. We don't need to send so many push notifications or emails or anything, because it's natural for the user to use our product. The second thing is this product actually becomes indispensable, because without it, the user cannot perform the habit. So the product is used for many, many years or months to come, because of the fact that it's became habitual. And it also gives it creates a continued success for the company, because if someone uses the product regularly, then for us it's less effort to keep them in the process. So when we want to do all that, when we want to design products that actually create habits, we can use the designing for behavior change, which is actually creating products that are not only good, and I mean good like ethically good, because, for example, we can argue that things like Facebook they are created in using all of those techniques and many more. But sometimes we can argue that it's not ethically right to actually design product that user cannot stop using and it doesn't give any value. The second thing is that we need to design this product to be behaviorally effective. So they create all those habits and they help people change their behavior. So how is the habit formed? What happens? What is this habit loop that executes every time that when we execute on a habit? So first thing is the reminder. This is the trigger or cue in the environment that prompts us to do some action. So it can be almost anything. It can be our feeling. It can be someone saying something, a thought, or seeing something, whatever, almost anything. The second thing is the routine. So it activates the behavior and the user is executing some action. And the third thing, which is not always there, is a reward. So a reward is why we want to do this activity again, but sometimes it's not necessary to be there, because for example, when we drive to work every day, like, we don't have the reward of going to work, like, let's be honest. But we do it so many times that it actually becomes a habit. So the reward helps to strengthen the behavior and to make it quicker to form, but it's not necessary to be. So let's use the Shazam app as an example of this habit loop. So first thing, let's imagine that you're going to work, you're listening to radio, and you're at some party, and you're hearing this amazing song that you really like, but you have no idea who the artist is or what the song's name is. And then you feel like, okay, so this is the trigger, because I want to really know what the song is. And then I think, okay, so I have this Shazam app, and I will use it to act on this trigger, because I have nothing else to do. I can also ask someone, which can also be a different type of behavior. But let's say that in this case, we have this habit of taking Shazam app to check the song. So then we open the app, we choose for the app to start listening to the song, which is a routine. And then we have the reward, which is knowing the name of the song and the artist. And then because of that, and we have the reward, which is almost, it happens every time and it's really important for us, then the habit becomes more stronger. So there are three things that we need to remember about our habits. First thing is that they are insensitive to reward changes. So the problem with habits is that after they form, even if you remove or change the reward at the end, the habit itself will not change. So this is the problem with focusing only on a reward, because it will not do much. The second thing is that it's independent of intentions. So if a habit is strong, then just wanting to change this habit will also not be successful. It's not enough to change, to break the loop. And the third thing is that the habits are automatic defaults. So if we are tired, if we are stressed, then the more we act automatically. So for example, if you are tired after work and you're supposed to drive to your friend, but usually you go back home, right, from work. So sometimes you go different route and then you find yourself driving home instead of a friend, because you've been tired after a whole day of work. So you activated automatic response to going back to home, instead going a new route, which is going to the friend. So with intentions, the research says that actually, as I said, if the habit is really strong, then just the intention of changing that is not enough. Of course, with weak or moderate habits, it can work, it can alternate the behavior, but with strong behaviors, it has no influence whatsoever. This is why breaking habits is considered one of the hardest behavioral things to do, because of the fact that it's so strong and it's automatic, so we don't, engage conscious thought into it, that it's super, super hard to change our behaviors. So if you are struggling with dieting or changing or, working out more or something, this is because of the fact that our brains are wired to actually act automatically, and it's really hard. So we have to work somewhere else. We cannot work only on intentions. The second thing is that habits take a long time to actually form. So it's around 2 months. And only in around 50% they are successful. And 50%, I mean people who are really, really determined to do it. And with your users, no one is really that determined enough to use your app regularly. So the problem is that when you think about this funnel that I showed you, is that it's a really leaky funnel. Many people will go into it, and then they will, go out on every stage of the process, and only a few of them will go to the end and actually act and execute on the action that you want them to do. For example, just using your app. So this is what we have to work on. There are those 5 stages of this funnel. So before the habit forms, we need to work on all 5 stages. We as designers, we usually work on the trigger, on the cue. So for example, we think, okay, so we will add push notifications, right? If we add push notifications, then user will use our app regularly. But no, that's not enough. That's merely not enough to actually prompt user to use the application. And also we work on the evaluation, so we think that, okay, if we educate the user about the benefits and everything, that he will want to use the application. Even if he wants to, sometimes he has no abilities or there's no timing to do that, so you need to understand all 5 stages and actually actively work on all of those. So the first stage is the cue, the trigger in the environment or user's internal state, to start using our product. So I will tell you about techniques which you can use in your work to design better products that act on those 5 stages and to help users to form the habit of using your application. So first of all, you can place the product in user's daily environment. You have to understand that somehow the product that you're designing will have to fit the user's daily habits, user's daily environment. So, for example, you can do it by explaining how he has to change the environment, so the app is a part of it. So in this case, this is an app for focusing in work, and it says that you need to develop a phone-free zone. So the application tells the user you have to change something. You can use our app for us to help you to work more focused, but still we have to be a part of that environment, and we help you to shape this environment. The second thing you can do is you should use a different cue each time, almost every time, because we as people, we tend to accommodate to triggers really quickly. So we have this, when someone, for example, when we hear the same sound for 1 hour, then after 5 minutes, we'll forget about it. So this is the same with triggers. They have to be a bit different for the user to act on them. Of course, when it's already a habit, then it doesn't have to be like that, because the habit itself can be really similar. But until it happens, then you need to change your cue every time. So this is what, for example, Duolingo does, is that when they send push notifications, they're almost never the same, because they want user to not open this push notification and think, okay, every time the same. But it shows, for example, like it just sends you hearts. Isn't that nice? It's like, you feel like you want to go there. And the next time they send something else, and then it makes you smile, it reminds you about using the application. So in this case, remember that if you want to prompt user about, like, for example, using emails or text messages or push notifications or whatever, try to make it more various, like not always the same. And the third thing you can do is to build the strong association with already existing routines, because it's really, really hard to create new habits, new routines, because, as I said, it requires a lot of effort, but you can actually build on the existing routines, because all of us have some routines, for example, waking up or making coffee or driving or taking a bus or whatever. So you can build on that and try to put your product into use right after already existing routine. So for example, this application asks you to put a cup of water by your bed when you go to bed, when you go to sleep. So if it just asked the user to put a cup of water by the bed, then he would think like there would be no urgency in that, and he would think like, okay, why I have to do it? I will do it later, or, you know, I don't have the cue to do it now. But it tells you to do it every time you go to bed. So you create a habit because user has to go to bed sometime. So then he thinks that, okay, I was supposed to put this cup of water just by my bed, and he will do it because of the association between those two activities. So the trigger is not in our app, it's in the environment, but we act on it, we create this association. This application also asks user when he wants to perform the act of meditating. So, because it's really hard to start meditating, right? It's completely new, we don't know much about it, but we usually want to start doing that. And I think it's Calm, it asks you, when do you want to meditate? So for example, it can be after brushing your teeth. So we brush our teeth every time, and then we create this strong association that after I finish brushing my teeth, I have to meditate. So this is also, and they also ask you when should they send you a notification to do that. So those are really good examples of using triggers and building on existing habits. The second part of the process is the reaction. So this is, as I said, really automatical process. The user evaluates in a milliseconds whether he even wants to use your product based on the prior experience with it or some associations that he has in mind with your brand or your application. So in this case, you need to build trust with your product before, because if the user doesn't trust your product and he doesn't believe that it will help him do something, then he will not use it, because he will react negatively, or he will not react at all to your product. So what you can do, for example, like this application in Google App Store, it already says that they are using social proof to say that 7Mind already transformed the lives of over 1 million people. So they build trust because they say, okay, we help 1 million people, so we can also help you. So even before the user starts the application, he sees that this app is really successful, and it will help him create better habits. The second thing you can do is to, which is, I think, kind of obvious, focus on building amazing user experience for the first time. And you have to really nail it. Because, as I said, the reaction is based on prior experiences. So if the prior experience was negative, and it was the first time, then he will probably not come back to your application. So the first time has to be really, really good for the user. He has to remember about the application. He has to think that it's worth his time. So for example, Calm, it's like super nice. When you go there, you see all those illustrations. They're super cute, the colors, the copy, their tone and voice, everything. Everything makes it super positive experience. And when you think about this application, when you see it on your in your phone, then you want to use it again. The third thing you can do to create better reaction is which is more research-wise, is to observe behavior and don't listen to declarations, because, as I said, this whole funnel is super automatical and it requires no conscious thought. So if you ask users whether they want to do something or they will do it, they will probably say yes, but this is not what will actually happen. So you have to focus on observing the behaviors, you have to focus on analyzing data and all that to actually be able to understand their potential reactions in the future. The third part of the process is the evaluation, which is semi-conscious. So this is where user actually starts thinking about whether he wants to use your product, whether he likes it, whether the cost of using that is not that high and the benefit is actually really good. So the first thing you can do is to talk to this conscious self, which is you can educate user about the benefits of using this product. Because of course we all want to be better people. We want to achieve more. We want to work out more. We want to learn more. We want to do all of that. So you can always even try to educate about the benefits. For example, like this amazing app for fighting plastic pollution. it helps me to evaluate my plastic something, and it tells me that I use more plastic than average people in some country. So they say that I should act on it because it's way too much. The average is lower, so I should start working on my habits to change my plastic pollution. The second thing you can do is to reduce the perceived cost of taking the action. So it's not always about how much time actually does taking the action take, but it's more about how user perceives it. If he thinks it's not a lot of time or a lot of effort, then he will gladly use your application. So in this case, like this application that tells you that learn something new with just 5 minutes per day, and you will get smarter faster. So it's really nice, right? We want to hear things like that. We want to hear that in just 5 minutes a day, I will become smarter, and it requires no effort for me. And the third thing we can do is to actually try to increase the motivation, because sometimes we can feel like we should do something, but we don't have the motivation to do it because, for example, like with learning something new, it's nice to learn something, but we have to take time to do that. So you can increase motivation, for example, by using gamification techniques or saving progress or feedback to show the user that he's making this progress and he shouldn't stop, that it's really fun to do that, and that he can also acquire something else like new levels or be the first on the leadership board. Almost the last thing is the ability to act. So this is the skills and resources to act on the action. If I don't have the skills or resources, I will not do it because I don't have the option to do that. So there are 4 dimensions to ability that you have to remember about. The first thing is the action plan. So if the user is lacking the action plan, if he doesn't know what steps he should take to start the action, then he will not perform the action. So it's the same with going to the gym. If we don't know how to train properly, if we don't know the exercises, we don't have the training plan, then probably we will not do it because we don't even know how to start. The second thing the user has to have is the resources. So this person must actually have the resources to act. So for example, if I want to go to the gym, I need to be able to pay for the training, right? Or the personal trainer. The third thing are the skills, which is really hard we don't have much, we can't do much about it. It's not up to us. Usually how much skills does this person has. But this is really important because the person must have the necessary skills to act. So if we want them to do something, we need to be sure that they even have the skills to do that. And the last thing is the belief in success, which is really important because some people have this tendency to feel like they cannot achieve anything. So whenever they start something new, they give up in the first second, like I won't be able to do it. I won't be able to go on a stage and give this talk because no, it's not me. It's always hard to do something new. It's always hard to break this this process of thought, but you have to try that, and you have to also try to break this in your user, because people are afraid to fail. People are afraid to look stupid and all of that. So we need to build their belief in their own success. So how do you do that? First of all, you remove friction, which is pretty obvious because that's why we design usable interfaces. We try to do the action as easiest as possible, which is, like for example, guiding user where to start. So if he goes to the new application, he usually, starts exploring and everything, but then he never actually starts doing anything because he doesn't know where. So in this case, the application tells the user that this is the place where you should start your first meditation. So we remove the friction of starting the new habit, of starting the new activity. It's super easy. I just log into the app tells me what to do, and I just do it. So the process is super fast. But if the app didn't tell me, and then I would go to this application and I would see all those meditation techniques and everything, then I wouldn't actually know what to do, right? Where should I start, with this 7 minutes or this 3 minutes or this whatever? So in this case, remember about guiding your user and trying to do this activity as easiest as possible. Also, you need to provide clear action plans. So the user has to know what are the steps to actually execute on this action. So in this case, for example, when this application wants to create a habit of drinking water, then it gives you a clear plan of how to do that. So in this case, you need to put the bottle of water by your bedside. This is really easy, right? I just put it by my bed. Okay, I do it, that's fine. Then I have to drink the water 3 times this week to succeed. Okay, so that's also easy. I have the clear plan that I have to do it every day for the next 3 days. And the end. Okay, so, and the first thing is that there's a routine to it, so I do it every time in the morning. And the last thing here is to address the self-doubt heads-on. We shouldn't ignore the fact that user will be afraid to do something new. So we can just tell them that, hey, it's fine, you will fail, and it's super cool that you will fail, because you will learn something from that. So the application tells you that you'll think hard, make mistakes, and learn from solutions. And this is really awesome, because when I'm afraid to do mistakes, when I'm afraid to answer wrong, because this is what I have this connotation from school that I cannot answer wrong, and then I see the fact that, hey, it's okay to answer incorrectly, then I feel, okay, I will try that, I will experiment, I will not be afraid of failure. And the last thing that you need for your users to act in your product is the timing, is the right timing, which is not always up to us, because we don't know where the user is, right? He can be in a crowded room, he can be at a party, or he can be, I don't know, on a holiday, so he won't be able to do what you want them to do. But there are some techniques how you can prompt them to act now and not later. The first thing is to create urgency in an artificial way. So for example, this is what all those social media applications do. They create the urgency that if you don't check the application now, you'll miss all those cool posts from your friends, and then if you log later to the app, then you will see something else. And then there's a FOMO, like fear of missing out, so I have to check the app every 5 minutes so I don't miss anything important. So this is the artificial urgency, but of course it can be more subtle than that. The second thing is to make the user commit to doing the behavior on a predefined time. So if there's no urgency to doing something, then we can create this urgency by making the user to commit to do this, for example, at 8 p.m. or 12 p.m. or whatever, because then there's this urgency that I committed that I will do it now, so I have to do it now, right? So, for example, when I told Fabulous that I will put my water by my bed at 9 p.m., then they will remind me about it. Hey, this is the time to do it now. So probably I will just go and have it done. And the last thing is to build on natural daily urgency. So there are things that will trigger us to act, whether we prompt the user or not. Those are the things like hunger, for example. So in the case of our daily schedule, we usually get hungry around lunchtime or dinner time or breakfast time. So we can count on the user to use our app in those times, or we can prompt him in this time that, hey, you should be eating lunch in 2 hours, so maybe start preparing it now. Or for example, we can prompt the user an evening before that, hey, you should start working on your lunch for tomorrow. And also there are 2 things that you should do after to make the habit stronger. So first thing is to provide instant reward, because of the fact that we live in an environment with delayed reward. For example, when we want to go on a diet, then we have to wait for the effects for a long time. So we don't like that. We like to have the instant reward, so we can create it artificially, which is really nice, because that's also fine to have something out of our action. Which is, for example, with this application, when you want the user to focus, is that every time he works for 25 minutes or more without using any other application, he builds his own forest and he grows his tree, which is really nice, because then you can actually see the results of your focused work. And every time you use other app, you kill your tree. So this is the instant reward of working in focus, because just working in focus sometimes cannot provide enough reward, right? Because maybe we don't see the results instantly. And the second thing is to use momentum to build commitment. We want, when user is already using the app, we want them to commit to doing that more often. So first of all, we have the fact that people want to be consistent with their previous behavior. If they committed to something, they want to act on it. It's actually really, really strong. I really would like you to read more about it because it's really funny to read what people can do just because they said something earlier. So, for example, in this case, I commit to doing something. I committed that I will, learn Spanish for 15 minutes a day. Okay. That I will do something for 15 minutes a day. So then I feel committed to continue that behavior. The second thing is the pain of losing, which is really, really strong. It's actually 2 times stronger than the pleasure of gaining something. So we can use it by showing user that, hey, you did all of that, for such a long time, and then you lost it, and you can either, in this case, pay to get it back, or just, try to avoid that feeling in the future, and I will never ever lose the streak again because of the fact how I felt when I lost it. So, for example, my friend recently shared an image that he continued learning some language for 100 days every day. So that's really cool because if he lost this 100-day streak, he would feel like really awful, right? So the pain of losing is really, really strong in us. So coming back to that, remember that your user has to go through that funnel every time he creates a new habit. So you should act on all of this. And there's a process which is really easy, which is very similar to what we do when we just design products, how to design more products that are behaviorally effective, which the first thing is to understand the science behind all of that. So I hope that I helped you with that today, but of course you should read more about it if you want to continue. The second thing is to discover, so you need to understand your user schedules, etc., to know who you're designing for. And the third step is to experiment on design itself. And then the fourth, the most important part is to refine. So you won't get it right the first time. No one ever does. You can be a behavioral scientist and still you won't get it right. You need to experiment with interface. You need to experiment with techniques. So you have to focus very strongly on refining the process and trying again and again. So that's all for me. Those are the resources. There were many more, but those are the most important ones. So if you would like to read more about it, I mostly use the science from the book Designing for Behavior Change, but also some other really good sources which I recommend. For example, like Hooked: How to Build Habit-Forming Products, which has very similar science, but just a little bit different. Okay, so that's all for me. Do you have any questions? We have like 2 minutes, so.